All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to MLS Monday here. It is the 15th of December. We are officially 10 days away from Christmas Day,
Oh my goodness.
9 days away from Christmas Eve, and approximately uh, it'd be about 18 days from the new year, I think.
My goodness.
No,
What happened to 2025?
16 days to New Year. So 2025 will
You
be,
did say approximate.
I said approximate, will be behind us. So, but yeah, so the year went quick. Today we have a very interesting topic. It's not really technology based, but it sort of is because I think people are using technology to sometimes write their descriptions,
Hmm.
and that is fair housing. And even though this is something that maybe not on the forefront of everybody's mind as you do your daily duties and functions as a realtor, it is something that unfortunately people get in trouble with. It's unfortunate, but sometimes people unawareness, their unawareness or ignorance, if you want to call it that, a
Hmm.
little bit harsh of a word, but not being aware, not intentional,
Yeah.
I think is the main thing. They're not intentional in doing this, but it happens, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have this long discussion today about fair housing and why it's so important. And NAR knows it's an important aspect. They put in Fair Haven just a couple years ago, and they're, it's something that's always talked about. They've got a great resource that you'll give them access to later
Hmm.
to talk about it. And what's interesting is most people can't even describe it, right? So if you ask them what are the things that
What is fair
go
housing?
into fair housing,
Hmm.
they don't even know the classes, right? Which classes there are. And then, we talk about housing for older persons. What does that mean? And there's actually two types of those, which most people don't realize either. So we're going to dive into this stuff. We're going to talk about some of the tools that I think the agents and realtors are using today, and some of the downfalls that that could have as well. So anything you want to add as we launch?
Yeah, I think, we had a couple of people say, hey, you guys are doing fair housing, but I see it's MLS Monday. What does that have to do with MLS? We see it in the MLS every day. You guys are getting creative. And as Jason said, it's really not on purpose. Sometimes we just mistakenly use the wrong terminology, trying to apply personalities to things. But we see it in the MLS every day. So we want to kind of tie it in between the tech and the practice of it, just to help you guys out because it's not something that's always done on purpose.
No, it's not. And like you said, it's a lot of the times it's unawareness. It's not reading a description.
Hmm.
We've seen it. We talked about that this morning. We've seen it way before artificial intelligence was writing
Yeah.
descriptions. And it becomes a danger, right? So you're talking about a federal law that holds a lot more teeth than an MLS violation. And you don't want to be that person. I'll be honest with you. I mean, as a consumer now in the real estate space, as I looked for somebody to possibly, possibly look into list and buy properties, I look at the product that the realtors in my community produce, right?
Hmm.
So where I live now, a house went on the market, so I wanted to go look at it. Obviously, as somebody that was a broker and currently MLS, I want somebody to represent me as a buyer's agent, willing to pay a commission and compensation. I know the value of the realtor, right? I know the value of a good realtor, right? I'm getting this, so I want somebody. But the first thing I go look at is I look at the product that they have, right? And I don't mean the houses you have in your MLS. I'm talking about what are you putting on social media? What are you putting in your descriptions? Spelling mistakes and all those things, honestly, are a turnoff for at least consumers like me that are willing to pay compensation that see the value of a good realtor. It's a turnoff for us because we're very specific. We want to make sure that if you can't spell words right in your listing, how are you going to represent me and fight and negotiate for the best possible deal possible, right?
Hmm.
And when I do new member orientation, which we did last week, Wednesday, I always ask them in the audience, I mean, you got 55 new agents going, I'm excited to sell real estate. I want to help the consumer, whatever their why is. And I'll say, how many of you are great negotiators? Because that is really what this job is really all about. You're
Hmm.
negotiating for your buyers, you're negotiating for your sellers, you're negotiating for your split with your broker, you're negotiating for commissions and listing agreements and extensions. And you get that list of as is contract with the 32 things from the home inspection you got to negotiate through. Everything we do is negotiations, right?
Hmm.
So I look at that and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay this person X amount of dollars out of my pocket, but they can't spell river right. And serious, like but it's a real deal.
Yeah.
Like, so as we dive into this. Sorry, I digress. It is
off
Monday,
on a
and you
tangent.
can all blame Joanna
Me.
for this because I am now I have two Starbucks
Oh,
this
it's like
morning.
okay. Okay.
So I normally get one Starbucks a day is what I'm allowed per doctor's order. So
You guys will get a lot of information today. You're welcome.
all right. So let's talk about what fair housing actually covers. So fair housing laws prohibit, and when I talk about fair housing, it's anything that has to do with housing, period, right? Discrimination, all housing related activities. So fair housing includes selling and purchasing of real estate. It includes leasing or renting. A lot of people don't realize that,
Mhm.
but it does include the leasing and renting of properties. And I think we find a lot of
The most
the
is in
most is
renting.
in renting it when we see the violation of MLS, right? Um, and then advertising, housing, and real estate services. So even in your advertising, um, financing, lending, and mortgage terms all have to do with fair housing and appraisals, property valuations, and access to MLS brokerage services and housing related programs. So even with us, we're held to fair housing and we can't discriminate and we don't against anybody with memberships and those types of things and who gets services, the same thing with broker services, everybody's got to be treated equally. And there's a whole thing of this like people that feel like they've been wronged for whatever reason. Um, some of them have been, but they've got this whole thing which is housing for everyone, right?
Mhm.
And that's really the mindset is housing for everyone. So
Well, and you kind of talked about what turns you off on a listing is the spelling, things like that. But how often do you read the description of a property as well and get turned off by it? Because maybe it says it's for a family and you don't have one, or it says
correct.
for couples and you're like, well, I'm sad and alone, so it's not for me.
Well, yeah, because
But
and
housing
then
for everyone, right?
right. And I think when we talk about this and when we started putting this together, it's really about us ourselves predetermining who that right buyer is.
Mhm.
And not only do you alienate people on the fair housing side, which is again a federal law, but you also limit the exposure of who you're marketing
Yeah.
to, and
You're losing
you're
dollars.
losing dollars. And
Hmm.
on the board, I was in a board meeting last week, Thursday, and somebody said at the board table, you either turn them on or turn them off,
Yeah.
right? Either like, oh, I get excited about this house, or oh, that's not for me,
Yeah. You don't
right?
ever want to be the person that like, and it's very innocent sometimes. We're
Yeah.
not saying that it's this practice that people are out there doing it on purpose, but you turn people away because they say, oh, it's not for me.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we got to get inside the buyers, and that's where we kind of and I see it now more
Hmm.
as somebody who's just a consumer that no longer possess a license. As a consumer, I see it more than I did as a broker, right?
Hmm.
Because
And they're seeing those listings every day too.
and we're looking at the descriptions and we're reading the descriptions and we're looking at the pictures and stuff. And I mean, everything you put in there, right? And let's be honest, photos in the MLS
Hmm.
is about the home,
Yes.
right? And people want to go
A
out there
lot
and
of
take,
people try to sell the lifestyle, and we get it. It's Florida, right?
I
You're
do
selling the lifestyle,
100%
but there's got to be a line.
correct. And that's kind of my point. Like as a consumer, I want to know, I'd rather have five extra houses, pictures of homes in the MLS as a consumer, again, consumer hat on, which I'm a consumer. And as a realtor, as a broker, I represented myself. So I never haven't had a realtor in a long time, except in the last 2 years. But as a consumer, I don't care about the park down the street.
Hmm.
I don't have children. In fact, it could be a turnoff for somebody that doesn't have children. Why would you,
Yeah.
so whether or not it covers under fair housing or not, and pictures and it can argue both sides.
Hmm.
It's like, is that going to sell the house?
Hmm.
Right?
Well, and then the other thing that we see a lot earlier, and we talked to this a little bit this morning, is people are, even if it's not in like a gated community or the amenities, I get it. You're going to sell the
Yeah.
amenities. But when you're trying to sell the area around it, being cautious because we see a lot of people who talk about maybe they took like two houses down, there's a church
Yeah.
and they put pictures of the church in there. And at what point are you like violating fair housing? Because they tell you, don't talk about it like in vicinity to any kind of religion or
Mhm.
and people will say, hey, I want to live in a neighborhood that's near a Catholic church. Well, you can't.
Right.
And you start putting those photos in the MLS and you start having an issue there.
Yep. Exactly. All right. Moving along. All right. So federally protected classes. So when I ask people this, even in orientation, they don't know. There are seven of them. So just remember fair housing seven. First one is race. So obviously, race is the on the top list. This is no order of importance. In fact, I believe this order was the order in which they were adopted.
Mhm.
So race, color, um, religion. So again, when you think about, descriptions that say, within 3 miles of the synagogue or within 3 miles of a Catholic church or 3 miles of even naming the church, that's a
Yeah.
non-denominational, right? Yeah, you got the churches in Gateway, and people who had that in their description. I mean, you don't want to use anything that has to do with religion and sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. That's a protected class under fair housing. National origin, where the person came from, right? And then disability, physical or mental, including reasonable accommodations. And again, this is where I think when we talk about in the rental world, this is where I think a lot of people drop the balls when it comes to disabilities,
Mhm.
because there are rules that are out there as you peel back the onion on these laws that you do have to make reasonable accommodations, specifically in the rental world.
Mhm.
And so the problem is people's interpretation of reasonable are from here to here. So what's reasonable to me
Yeah.
may not be reasonable to you. But as somebody who had rental properties, if I had a request, as long as I didn't have to sell my firstborn to do it, I was going to
Well,
do it.
and when you talk about like what your opinion of reasonable is and what my opinion of reasonable is, could be vastly different. So instead of putting opinion in it, take that all out and utilize your legal hotline,
Mhm.
because they get calls on the daily about the Fair Housing Act and what is allowed, what isn't. Utilize your legal hotline down at Florida Realtors to, figure those things out.
Yeah, and it is a huge benefit. That's a great point of reference on any of these
Hmm.
as you're putting things
Trying to figure
together.
out what's right and what's
But
wrong.
when I read including reasonable accommodations, I always think of the rental piece, right?
Yeah.
Because on a home, you're buying it as is. Like
Hmm.
I'm not going to get it ready. I'm not going to make a
They're gonna do it once
right.
they
They're going to do it
buy
once
it,
I buy
right?
it, right? But on a rental is where I see that, and it's just um and the
And then
familiar
lastly,
status.
we see that a lot in the MLS. I think that's like the biggest one we see.
Yeah, presence
So
of children under 18, pregnancy or guardianship. So yeah, I mean we see this. This is probably the number one area that people
yeah,
hit on,
because
and
everybody always like, loves to market the property. Again, you're trying to like put this personality to the property, and that's where you need to stop. We always look at a house and go, oh, this would be perfect for a small family. Well, you've said family instead of a single person, or you've said family instead of, whatever their familia status is. When you point out that it's perfect for one type of familia status, you leave out the other ones, and that's where it becomes a fair housing issue.
correct. Yeah, and I think if you're going to talk about that, this is a perfect house. Instead of talking about the people, talk about maybe the lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? Perfect house for somebody who wants to be in the center of the city, right? There's other ways to sell it
Hmm.
versus saying, and we see it all the time, couples and this and that, and
Yeah, I
it
think
just,
couples is like the biggest one that we get flagged on.
yeah,
And really, so at the end of the day, like Jason said, don't sell to the characteristic of the person you believe that's going to buy the house. You can sell the lifestyle, right? Like what there is to do around the area, what it's close to, sell the actual physical attributes of that home, but don't, and it's easy for us to look at it and go, oh, who would be perfect for this house? But then you've left out anybody else who thinks that that's going to be the perfect home for them. And at the end of the day, you've clearly gone against fair housing, but you've also lost your commission on that because again, you've turned them off.
right. Yeah, you turn away the people. So I think the problem is, and I look at this from a practitioner standpoint, is that when you walk through a house and you're listing a home,
Hmm.
right? So we're talking about MLS. The listing agent loads a listing up, right? Not the buyer's agent. So they're looking at the house. We've all done it. We walk through the house and go, oh, this would be perfect for the boater enthusiast, or this would be perfect for, yeah, a growing family, or
Yeah.
this would be perfect for a large family,
Downsizing. We see
right?
that all the time. Downsizing, retirees.
But you're already thinking in your mind who that perfect buyer is, and
Hmm.
it probably could be, but you can't advertise it that way, right? When you look at houses down here, one of the things that shocked me was, at least in the time in '04, it was rare to see a 4 or 5 bedroom house. Like,
Yeah.
and, now you see 6, 7 bedroom homes out there, for a growing family. But again, that's fair housing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have some people that may want a 7 bedroom house. They got a gym in one, they got an office in the other, they got a man cave in one,
Craft
and
room.
and no children, right? So it just take out the personality
Yeah.
and think about just the location and what's going to make that home sell.
And I think a lot of times, I don't know if I don't want to jump ahead. I don't know if you have a slide for it, but
Probably do. I'm kidding.
okay. I think a lot of times, like, as realtors, you listen to your seller more than your intuition. Are you getting to that point, or can we talk about that now?
We can get to that point. What's the next slide? Yeah. Important real reality check. So intent does not matter. Impact does, right? So you can have the best of intentions. And if somebody knocks on your door and says, I'm with HUD, that's a bad day. HUD doesn't make doorstops unless it's a major issue. And, you know, you can say, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it that way. That intent does not matter, right? Impact does. Advertising language counts. What you say matters, right? Either turn them off or you turn them off. Or you turn them on or turn them off. But it matters what you write in there. Think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
and people will say this. I mean, I ask agents all the time when I was a broker. I said, why don't you write more about the property? Well, nobody reads it anyways. That is not true. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers in my lifetime, hundreds, and they've all read.
They all read it.
They all
Because
do.
they call us after they read it.
Right. They call us after they read it. Trust me, they all read it.
Yeah.
So make sure you're really describing that house and not the person that belongs in it or could buy it, right? Describe the house. So again, advertising language counts, photos. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing. You alluded to the church in the background. There's a lot of things. When you look at the photos you take, at least I took a lot of time to think through the process and start with the end in mind. You have Stephen Covey saying, start with the end in mind, what I wanted that to look like on the market. My product is not the house. My product is my advertising ability, my marketing ability. That's why people hire realtors, right? They have a marketing ability to market and highlight all the features at home. So starting with the end in mind, saying, okay, I want this to really show great, but what are in the photos, right? And I'll tell you, and this is just, the way I was, and people go back in the MLS and look at my listings. I didn't have any family photos in any of my listings.
Right.
I made them take all the photos down.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want people to feel like, oh, this is a family house over there, whatever. I mean, there's some subliminal things. And I know it's it's a thin line between subliminal and like really saying stuff, but I didn't want to turn people off, in that house.
Yeah. Aside from it being like fair housing related, I think just from a good practice standpoint, it's hard for people to walk in and picture themselves in a home and somebody else is so integrated in a home. It's easier for them to picture their own items, their own pictures, all of their personal stuff in a home when you've taken the characteristic and personality out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you same thing with wedding photos. I mean, all this other stuff, right? So I was very adamant about that. I was like, I don't want that to be, you turn them on or turn them off.
Yeah.
And then emojis. Again, people don't think about this.
Oh gosh.
Right? But people advertise on Facebook all the time and they're putting these emojis out there. I mean, just think about that. Filters and then targeting all matter. So, and then steering, even without intention, is still discrimination, right?
You can have the best of intent, but
yeah,
it still happens.
Yeah. And so you started talking about what happens in real life, right? So when we talk to people that violate these in MLS, a lot of the things that they come back and say is, oh, my customer wanted that in there.
Yeah.
My customer wanted to sell it to just this specific, race or specific religion or whatever. And I'm like, who's the professional? That's like me telling the doctor.
That's why we have to advise them, right? Because your seller at the end of the day could, potentially look at getting in trouble. But then it's advising them on, hey, that's not going to sell the house. You're not going to, we talked this morning. When I was managing, we had a specific customer that said, we built the house to, and I won't name what their culture was, but it was to their culture. The updates they made were culturally appropriate to celebrate specific things in their culture, and it was made specifically for that. And they sat one of our realtors down and said, we only want to sell to X type of person, and that's only the people we will sell to. And the realtor at the end of the day said, well, my seller asked for it. You can't practice it because your seller asked for it.
Yeah.
So it's either you educate them or you've got to let them go. Just because your seller said doesn't mean you get to break the laws.
No, exactly. And it's funny you brought that up because I sat on a panel at Triple Play, which just ended actually this last weekend. It wasn't this year. It was years ago. I sat in a panel and
It's what made it
it was
popular.
last minute. But it was about fair housing. And what they
Mhm.
said was, and this was in New Jersey, so this is New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. State associations throw this thing together on the boardwalk, basically in what's a gambling city that's there. I don't go there, so whatever. So, but they had me on a panel and talk about this is, but people are arguing my fiduciary responsibility,
It's to the
right,
seller.
is to the seller. I have to obedience is part of this fiduciaries, right?
Right.
Not when the law trumps obedience, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell agents, I said, well, so if your customer told you to kill their husband or wife, would you do
Yeah.
it? Like,
Yeah. Well, and that's what we said to them too. I think the example we used was, well, if your, seller told you that they were lying and committing fraud,
right,
you had an agreement with them, like, are you obedient to like help them commit fraud?
right,
No.
exactly.
So
Yeah, the
same.
law will trump your fiduciary responsibility. Again, I'm not your
Absolutely.
lawyer, I'm not your broker. I am not a therapist. Although some days I feel
Yeah.
like one.
God forbid you like face that kind of situation, again, your broker, legal hotline, how are you going to traverse those
Absolutely.
happens. It
It
happens,
does
right?
happen.
And I know people have the best of intention. They were very proud about their culture. They built their house to that and they said, this is what we want to sell it to. But unfortunately, it's not something you can do.
Yep, yep.
So
And
I
then
last bullet point.
social media posts are advertising. There's no exceptions. So again,
Yeah.
watch what you're putting out there because even if it's not in the MLS, we don't police Facebook, we don't police Instagram. There's not enough hours in the day to do that.
But ethics does.
But ethics does. Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want to do
Somebody
is have a
reports you.
customer.
Yeah.
Just think about the bad PR on this stuff. We're going to talk about this later on, but I mean, just the bad PR that's happened in this country over this topic,
It can
right?
happen so fast. You can go trending for the wrong reasons
Yep,
so fast.
yep,
And social media is like they're not even going to let you to a certain point discriminate, right? So
correct. We had that conversation. So, okay. Onward and upward. All right. So let's talk about this. This is a topic that comes up a lot. We do have housing for older persons. It's a limited exemption under the Federal Fair Housing Act,
Mhm.
and recognized in Florida law. So we do have it in Florida. Um, okay, it allows certain communities to lawfully restrict residency based on age without violating familiar status protections, provided strict criteria are met. So let's talk about that criteria. So go ahead next slide here. People say, well, what's that? That's discrimination. Well, yes and no. So there's two types of housing for older persons in Florida. There's a 62 and older housing, which basically means 100% of occupied units must have at least one resident who's 62 years of age or older. So if it's a husband and wife or husband and husband, one's got to be 62 or older, the other one can be 55, it doesn't matter. But one in the household's got to be 62 or older. That's the first one. There's not a lot of properties that fall within this.
Mhm.
Very few. Most of what we deal with is the 55 and older housing.
Mhm.
That is a majority of what you see out there. Okay, so it's the most familiar on most of this. So all the following must be true. At least 80% of occupied units have at least one resident, again, 55 years of age or older. 80%. That leaves 20% that does not need to fall in that. Now it says at least 80%. The covenants inside that HOA will dictate what that number is, right? Some say 16% can be open, 12%, whatever. But at least 80% of the occupied units have at least one resident who's 55 years of age or older. And then the housing communities publishes and adheres to policy procedures demonstrating intent to operate as 55 plus housing. And what I read and interpret that as is I'm not going to pick and choose. We are a 55 plus community, 55 and better, because I'm getting close to that 55 number. I
55
call
and better.
55 and better housing community, right? So you can't pick and you can't have your cake and eat it too on this. You are that, you adhere to policy and procedures, you got written bylaws, you got written policies and procedures, how they check, how they verify, all that stuff has got to be documented. Okay. And then the community verifies the age of residents through reliable documentation, maintains those records. So if you've ever sold in those communities, which I have, they do at closing, they have to provide it, all this information with their HOA, with regards to getting the licenses and who's going to be there. You got to list all your, who's going to be in that house, etc. So that's what that is. So it's a small carve out. I think we deal with a lot of it in Southwest Florida. If you go to Tallahassee, not as much, right? People aren't retired at Tallahassee. So we deal with a lot more in Fort Myers and Naples areas, Port Charlotte, than most do. But again, it's not something that it's a small carve out. It's not something that's considered fair housing violation. It's a small carve out. So, all right. So moving on, what realtors should never say. The list should be longer than four, but we kept it to four. These are things that we've seen in the MLS. No kids allowed. Again, there's a better way of saying that, okay, than no kids allowed. Well, typically, these are what we found to be 55 and plus, HOFs, and they're saying no kids allowed. Don't put that in there. Their bylaws,
discriminatory language versus the rule language.
Correct. So don't put that in there. Perfect for seniors only. Again, right? Although that may be true, you can't put that in there as a description piece. Okay. Adults only community, again, the same thing. And even in legitimate 55 plus or 62 plus housing, language does matter because you can still get in trouble. So call it what it is. And I think when people get in trouble is when they start using prompts and things with like ChatGPT or Grok or any of these other AI tools that are out there that are not conditioned to fair housing. So if you're going to use something, which is a lot of good AI out there right now, Agent 3000 is one of them that has, it's trained on the fair housing rules. But when you start using that, that's where it's important. So I put the website in the bottom here, HUD.gov, program and offices in fair housing, equal opportunity, 55 or older housing. That's where that carve out is. So if you read it on your own as well, if you'd like to. All right, so we're gonna have some fun here. Hopefully everybody.
I'll give them a second. Yeah, I'll give them a second to read it before we pop up the poll.
Yeah, so this is a description, and we're not picking anybody in particular. It's a real live description. So, but it's again to give you guys kind of what we see.
On a daily basis.
Yeah, on a daily basis. I mean, we could have picked 30 of these out of here. We're not picking any one thing. But look at what this is here, and we're going to pull up a poll and want you to answer the poll based on whether or not you think there's a fair housing violation or not. So you'll hit 1 if it is, or 2 if it's not, wherever the poll says, when it pops up here. So, but go ahead and read it. But this is, something that I think that, as we go through this, you'll see what we do every single day on looking at this stuff. And then we'll pop the poll up.
Should have Jeopardy music.
I could sing, but that would not be good. All right, so we launch the poll up. Everybody should be able to see that. So when you get done reading it, go to the poll questions. It says, is this fair housing compliant? Or fair housing complaint?
Complaint.
Seriously, compliant.
We get to say, is it a fair housing complaint? Would they complain if it was fair housing?
Okay. This is a fair housing complaint. Yes, it is a fair housing complaint. Okay, so yes or no. So keep going. There's only 2 people to answer the rest. We know how many people we have on.
It's a long description.
It's a very long description. So when you have time,
it's also entertaining.
It's very entertaining. We got about 46 participants that have answered.
All right, we got 9.
All right, so we're gonna end the poll here. So there is fair housing complaints here. And so we're gonna share the stop sharing that. Yeah, so share results.
Yep.
All right, so that's what it was. Okay, so yeah, so 7 out of 9 said yes, fair housing complaint. 2 said no. For those of you that said yes, what is the violation? Go ahead and put it into the Q&A.
The Q&A box, the chat box.
The chat box, rather. Yeah.
No, the chat box does not work. So if you use the
Q&A. Yeah, Q&A box. That's why I say the Q&A box. You need to keep up with the coffee and the caffeine.
Okay. I don't know. This one's entertaining. This says PSL not included.
So yeah, so put in the Q&A why you think there's a violation for housing in this. What's the violation? So we can kind of see what people's thoughts are. We can kind of talk through this. Nobody's putting Q&A.
That's okay.
All right, so go ahead and walk through this, Joanna.
Yep. This is a long description, so I don't think we need to read through the
Nope.
whole thing. It is very fun. We can tell that they've used some AI here, right? Because it pulls in a lot of personalities. There's a lot of dashes. Talks through, this was something that was posted in the fall, lots of stuff about PSLs, fall leaves, giving everybody the vibes. It was for a rental, but when we get down here, it says that this property is ideal for solo dwellers or cuddly couples. So that right there is familia status. Look at that. Paola got it. Solo dwellers and cuddly couples. So again, it's great. We can tell they've used AI. It's got lots of personality, great way to sell it, but
Yep.
all
All
right,
right,
and we got
next one.
one more for you guys. We'll let you read it before I pop up the
Before we pop up the
because this one's long. Yeah.
this one's really long.
And I know the chat box will cover it, so all right, we're gonna go ahead and launch that poll.
Compliant.
I know
Is this fair housing
I was
compliant?
trying to trick them. One was a complaint, one was compliant.
Oh, you tricked
So
me.
is this compliant with fair housing laws? You guys
So yes means it's
answer.
perfect, no means it's not,
It's
right?
like when all the kids have to take the FCAT and they trick you in the questions.
They do. That's an e-test, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had that with the RCE. They wanted you to fill that test. Love you all. And they are peeps, but love
Setting you
you.
up for failure.
Well, he's got to read it twice. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
I don't know. And I think, with these ones, the reason we use them as examples is these descriptions are really hard to catch because they are so jammed packed with adjectives. And it's like, are we even talking about the property anymore? Are we just talking about coffee and campfires and holidays? All right. So we've got 4 answers here. We'll go ahead and, because I know it's a lot for you guys to read. So, is this compliant with the fair housing law? 3 of you said no, 1 of you said yes.
Yep. So
All right.
it is not.
Okay.
So those that said no is correct. So ideal for solo rentals or couples who love a little charm and their comfort.
Yeah, and what's funny is I think this one actually came to us because they were saying that it was discrimination against the dog, friendly pets welcome. And they're like, who's to say if it's friendly or not? No aggressive or dangerous breeds. That's a whole different subject of what is and isn't allowed. But at the end of the day, when we read through it, first thing we came to here again, ideal for solo renters and couples who love a little charm. Lots of great stuff in here that, sells it for the season. Thankfully, they don't specifically talk about like Christmas or anything, that would be religion based, but it's
Religion-based
familial
holidays,
status
yeah.
again.
Yep, exactly. So you're leaving out families, so that's why the violation. So yeah, I mean, this is stuff that we really see. It's live data that's out there. So
Mhm.
all right, let's move on. So there's been a lot of coverage around this. There's not a lack of information or a lack of case law, if you will,
Yeah.
to support this. So racial steering lawsuit against realty company. It's a Buffalo area real estate firm. It was sued for allegedly steering buyers based on race. NAACP Legal Defense Fund filed a complaint. and the settlement required changes to training and practices. So this was a brokerage in Buffalo that was basically if somebody wanted to buy a house and they were African American, they were taken to a certain part of the town, and that's where they were showing them. They were not showing them any other areas except for this one area. And so it became relatively, noticed. And then allegation real estate agent gave different housing options based on race, filing fair housing. So, if somebody that was Caucasian walked in, they were taken to another section of the city, and it just very quickly exploded into this thing. And it was pretty much everybody in that very small real estate company. So again, fair housing doesn't matter if you're a 2-person office or a 200-person office. Violation of violation, and they really looked at this. So NAACP Legal Defense Fund sues realtor over racial steering. And then Legal Defense Fund reached resolution requiring improved fair housing practices. So that was the follow-up, and there's the case down there that's on the bottom there. Again, this doesn't take a lot of time. By the way, this was very, very recent. This was like last year.
Wow.
So it's not like we're talking about something that happened in the 70s. It was just last year.
Yeah.
So 2025.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think they finished it out in 2025.
Yeah.
Since your article was there.
Here's another one, massive civil rights complaint against agent of brokerage in California. So this is an undercover investigation in California, resulted in what was the largest housing discrimination case in the state's history. Over 200 real estate agents,
Wow.
brokers, and firms accused of discriminating against families using Section 8 vouchers. So again, discrimination. They literally went undercover and got 200 agents that were in violation of this. Allegations included refusing to work with certain voucher holders and unequal treatment based on income sources.
And we see that a lot in the MLS too, right? They talk about like the qualifications right there in writing of like what's gonna get you approved and not get you approved. Be very cautious. Use your broker, use legal hotline before you start putting that stuff in there. Because we see people say like, hey, Section 8 voucher friendly, and then we see people say no Section 8. And that's you're really kind of crossing a line there. So make sure you run that if you're gonna start talking about what's gonna get them accepted. Run your description through legal hotline for sure.
Correct. And you said leverage your broker. Here's what was like an all for me, from my experience, has been the fact that, again, true story, agent goes in there, says in MLS says no Section 8 vouchers, right? And I'm like, where'd you get that information from? And they're like, well, that came from the customer. Customers don't want it. Okay, do you know what that even is? Do you know if this house even qualifies? Do you even know what Section 8, like, and when you
They just
peel back
typed
the
it
onion,
out. Oh.
they just put it out there. They had no idea what they're even talking about, right? So if you're gonna put something in, I always tell people, you should be highly educated in what you're putting in the MLS.
Yeah.
Highly, highly educated. They had no idea. And then so I found out that the customer, the
seller.
person, well, yeah, I guess you call him the landlord, was as ignorant about Section 8 as the agent was. He didn't
Nobody
know.
had any idea.
Nobody had any idea. What I mean, and so as an investor, somebody I had in real estate, that I love that because it's guaranteed income. It's
Yeah.
and you can't discriminate against it. So it's like, what's the difference? Like, do you really know what the differences are? Right. So, all right. This was a really interesting one. So this is an article on trends, which is real estate trends. It talks about fair housing. Complaints jump as more people report being victim of discrimination. So as I read this article and several other ones preparing for this, what I realized is this is something that's going up and up and up and up, right? So this is again, April 19, 2024, just a year and a half ago, not even a year and a half ago. This was Homes for All, sign they're holding, people protesting out there, and housing discrimination on the rise. Fair Housing Month in April, so that's why this came out in April. But talking about this and just the complaints through HUD, which is where the complaints go through, complaints to MLSs, which I know we take our complaints of violations here, and then just the amount of lawsuits and media and stuff like that. When I was Googling articles, I had probably 25 different articles from around the country with cities as small as 1,500 people and as large as millions of people that all had articles about discrimination by a realtor toward a consumer, um, and a fair housing violation. So it doesn't, again, doesn't look at city size, doesn't look at parts of the country, doesn't look at time zones. It's a universal problem that's out there. So, all right. So let's talk about some of the resources that are out there. This YouTube video,
Pull these up for them as well, so we can put it in the chat for you
yeah,
guys.
we'll put this in the chat. So a couple years ago, they did another sting operation in New York City. And we're going to give you the YouTube channel for that so you can watch on your own. We actually did movie nights in April a couple times, or movie days at our association about fair housing.
It's featured on 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes, okay. So this is, Long Island Divide real estate agents treated undercover clients on Long Island. So the sad part about this is it's a documentary with undercover cameras and things, and there's some real stuff that's very concerning, that you'll see there. It's 42 minutes long, 41 minutes and 47 seconds, 17 seconds. But it really does talk about this stuff that that we're talking about today. So
yeah, that's in the chat for you guys. Save it. I mean, if anything, you can also go to YouTube and search Long Island Divided. There's like a whole bunch of shorts, but you want the entire documentary that they base the shorts off of.
Which was on 2020 or 60 Minutes. So yeah, I mean, watch it. It's eye-opening. When I was practicing, I did 2 meetings where I showed that video as part of my sales meeting. It was impactful.
Yeah.
Because it blows your mind. But I'm gonna tell you, some of those folks it was the way they were trained.
They knew what they were doing.
They know what they were doing. Some of it's ignorant. Again, call it ignorance is a very strong word, but they didn't know what they don't know.
And you watch it through the consumer's eyes, right? Because they're like strapped down with cameras and they'll show you like, what the different types of people that they send into these meetings, and you watch the difference in treatment. And I don't know. It was very, very interesting to me. Well, I've watched it like 3 times over.
Yeah, and part of it is that we go through our lens and going, okay, people want to live around people that they're like. And that's an assumption. I don't think it's a maybe necessarily a wrong assumption, but it's wrong to steer people without finding out what they want, right?
Yeah.
And just not to automatically go, oh, you're this, you belong in this. You're this, you belong in here. That's not okay, right? So, so I think that video is fantastic. The next link we're going to give you is NAR. Does a fantastic job. With their fair housing.
Yeah, their page is updated regularly. So this is something good just to save, right? If you hear in the news that, they're updating anything with fair housing, or there's new laws, or there's new this, there's new that, you want updated resources, go here, because this isn't just like a stagnant page. They update this regularly. And then they also have pamphlets that come out every year. They've got a whole thing of resources on here. You can also buy in for any brokers that we might have on the call. They've got like the handbook that you can purchase that gets updated regularly as well, every couple of years. Just great resources. The little brochure, if you want to print that out and give it, have it in your office, give it to all your customers. They've got things that you can purchase in there as well, but lots of resources coming from NAR on this.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, when you look at what NAR does, we talk about advocacy all the time, right? And it is advocacy. And the advocacy to me is the advocacy for the consumer, for the person buying and selling the house, the humans behind the transactions, right? Yes, for the realtors too, but it's about home ownership. And that's what they advocate, is affordable housing, fair housing. That's the advocacy that we see NAR doing. And that's what our PAC is about, right? So the Political Action Committee. It's about protecting home ownership for all. And that's really what NAR does. When I go to do broker office visits and people say, well, why NAR? Why should I be a member of NAR? It's like, I don't want to be a member. What do they do for us? Advocacy. That's the number one thing. There's not a bigger, more proficient advocacy group in the entire country as there is at NAR. It's a huge machine and they do a great job of this. Which is important to us. I mean, like you mentioned this. I mean, you don't want bad PR. Bad PR is not good, right? Everybody says, "Oh, all PR is good PR." That's not true. Your stuff going up there. So This is a little a graphic I did, discrimination in housing is illegal under federal law. Just remember that. So a couple things. Let's talk about a little bit about the tools that are used. I think there's some great AI out there.
Yeah.
Agent 3000 has, it'll be, compliant to fair housing. I think some of the stuff with real reports, all the stuff that we're providing um, is typically trained on fair housing, right? If you don't have and you don't want to use the tool that we have, and let's say you're a Chat GPT person or a Grok, you need to put in there that you want to write a description, and you could put playful, fun, talks about winter, whatever those prompts are that you want to make it feel the feel of it, but always put to be in compliance with federal fair housing, and it will go out there and look at what federal fair housing is, and it will not typically put that stuff in there. Now, even when you use that prompt, and we're saying, okay, well, again, ignorance is no excuse. You can't come and say, "Oh, I did Grok GPP, and I was on Jason's thing, and he said, make sure you put fair housing in there." So I did, and I copy and pasted and read it.
Yeah.
You got to still
When we
read it.
call these people, they say, "Oh, I didn't read it."
Yeah, 99% of the time.
It's not enough.
So even if you put the right prompt in the chat or into Grok or whatever you're using, you have to make sure you read it, because whatever you're putting out there, you're number one representing that seller, that human that's selling that house, that's moving on to a new chapter in their lives. You're representing that person, and everything about their house. And again, somebody like myself that's looking at what goes on the market in my neighborhood because I want to find the realtor to sell my house. I'm looking at those things. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this person's a nutcase. Look at this description, right? I'm not going to hire them to list my house, right?
Yeah.
They can't spell. So again, that representation is so critically important. And then, everybody said, well, we got to put this stuff in there to sell or refresh and get ourselves to the top. Next week, we talk about rich media. We'll talk about getting your listings to the top and getting them sold faster by using rich media, right? But until then, you got to be compliant with the fair housing and make sure that you read everything you put in there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. So as we wrap up here, we're getting to the top of the hour. Parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts. I think it's just slow down and take a moment, think things through. I know that most of you guys, when we see these mistakes, they're not intentional. It's either that you just assigned a characteristic to it, or you didn't read it. So stop, slow down, and just think fair housing before you press publish.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say my word of my thought, my word of my thought would be start with the end in mind. Again, know what you're trying to accomplish, right? Before you even start. And that way you'll know the pieces to do. When I walked through a house, I would go through with the paper, 13-page paper of the MLS printout that you fill out to have it inputted. It goes in the right order, the input sheets. I did paper and a clipboard with that every time. I would tell them about ceiling fans. And I know it sounds crazy, but that matters, right? And you put there's 13 ceiling fans or whatever the crazy thing is, and what brand they are and what type they are, right? They're a dual spin ceiling fan, or whatever they may call it. That's important. That's what should be in these descriptions. So if you're going through with the thought process of I'm starting with the end in mind, I want to have a very complete, great description, right? And we just expanded the description characters this past year. So you can put more in there because people do read. And then what pictures, what angles, what do I want in the background, what I don't want in the background. What do I want in the house when when it's photographed? Do I want, and it's simple things. You just got to be cognizant of it. And it's not, it's working with your customer, but what do you want and not want? And I know I have my own things that I would never put in a picture in a million years, but everybody's got their own things. You want to make it to what Joanna said. I mean, people can't sometimes picture themselves in that house that somebody else is living in it because it's personalized to them, right? So just those little basic things, but start with the end in mind, and read everything you put in there. Read it again. Have somebody else read it for you. I just had a document this weekend. I had somebody read for me, and they found like 6 mistakes that I overlooked on it. But I worked on this document for like hours, and I was finally seeing sideways. I'm like, all right, somebody else got to read this. And sure enough, there's mistakes in it. But I was working on it so long, I was looking at the new stuff and not the old stuff. And it was, it's very simple stuff. But again, have somebody else read before you push. Once it's out there, it's out there. So, all right. Any questions for us?
Nope, none are left.
All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate everybody showing up today on this very important topic. Been probably more appropriate in April for Fair Housing Month, but we're in December, so
Fair housing is every day.
fair housing is every day. So I want to wish everybody a very safe and happy holiday.